I don't believe in God. I'm not convinced that God exists. If you say that God exists, you have to prove it. You have the burden of proof. I don't. This is the typical atheist objection. But what's wrong with this objection? Is it true that we that believe in God have the burden of proof? Are we the ones that need to defend our position? Things are more complicated than this, and it's all about definitions. When an atheist comes up with this objection, the first thing you need to ask is, what do you mean by God? How do you define God? Because typically, when atheists think about God, they think about this mythical, mysterious, invisible person in the sky. And so they're like, if you claim there's a mythical, invisible person in the sky, you need to prove it to me. Because I look up in the sky and I don't see anybody. If God is a mythical, mysterious man in the sky, possibly with a white beard, I'm atheist too. In fact, if I claim that God is a mythical, mysterious, invisible man up in the sky, atheists would be absolutely right to say, you have the burden of proof, prove it to me. Exactly as if I claim that there is an invisible pink donkey living on Mars. Well, it would be silly for me to say, hey, you need to show me that this invisible pink donkey does not exist. The burden of proof is on you. No, because this claim is totally unreasonable and illogical. I cannot put the burden of the proof on you to demonstrate that something that is totally logical and unreasonable is not true. But let's see what happens if we take a much more serious definition of God. What if we define God this way? God is defined as the necessary, uncaused cause of everything that exists. Let me repeat that. If I define God as the necessary, uncaused cause of everything that exists, what happened to the atheist argument? Now, the definition of God is not something that an atheist should own because they don't believe in God. We that believe in God are the one that have the right to give the right definition because we are claiming to believe in something, and so we are the one that own the definition of God. We don't have to let atheists to define God for us because of course they're going to define God in a caricatural way so that they have an easy way to shoot it down. It's a straw man position. So the fact that we are the ones that need to define God is perfectly fine. We should be doing that because we are the one that are claiming to believe in God. So let's see what happens to an atheist if God is defined this way. Now, first of all, let me try to unpack what this definition means. What is a necessary thing? All right, a necessary thing is a thing that needs to be because it's logically impossible that it does not exist. It cannot not exist. Let me give you an example of a necessary concept. 2 plus 2 equals 4. And this concept is necessary. It's impossible that 2 plus 2 makes anything else than other than 4. Okay? 2 plus 2 equals 4 in this universe and in any other possible universe that you can think of. Okay? So these logical statements are true independently of anything else. And being necessary, okay, they just exist. Okay? It's not possible that 2 plus 2 equal 4 was not there before. Okay? 2 plus 2 equal 4 is true, and it has always been true and will always be true in any condition, in any place, in any universe. Okay, this is an example of a necessary condition. What is the unnecessary condition or being or thing? Okay, well, this chair here is totally unnecessary. It's not that this chair exists because it's impossible that this chair does not exist. No, it exists because somebody built it. Okay? So it needs something or somebody that creates this chair for this chair to exist. It's not that intrinsically this chair needs to be. No, it doesn't. It exists if somebody builds it. It doesn't if somebody doesn't build it. Okay? But of course, you can extend this argument not just to this chair, but to pretty much anything that exists. Is this table here necessary? No. Is this house necessary? No. Is the street sign necessary? No. Is the city necessary? No. Are the plants necessary? Are the animals necessary? Are we necessary? No. Is the universe necessary? No, it's not necessary. Why? Because it's a very specific universe. Think about the general laws, the fundamental laws and constants of physics that regulate the universe that we know of. Think about the speed of light. It's a very fast, it has a very precise value. Where does that value comes from? There's nothing special or necessary about the value. The speed of light doesn't necessarily have to be that value. You could go a little bit faster or a little bit slower. Actually, you can think about another universe where the speed of light is a little bit faster or a little bit slower, and it would be a different universe, but there's nothing that would prevent that universe from existing. Okay? And you can say this about pretty much any parameter in the universe, any law in the universe, as if any physical law. The gravitational constant, it's super small. The cosmological constant is almost zero, but slightly positive. Why? There's no reason why. Okay. The laws of physics of gravitation. Okay, gravitation goes down by the square of the distance. You know, there could be another universe where it goes down by the cubic distance. It would be a different universe, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. Okay, so the universe itself is not necessary. It's a very specific, particular setup system with some specific parameters that have nothing that are necessary. And so let's think about this necessary and unnecessary. If you had things that are not necessary but that are there, the first question that we ask is, why are they there? Okay, let me give you an example. If you walk in the desert, okay, of the Sahara in North Africa, and all of a sudden you walk and walk and walk, and there's only sand, 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 and all of a sudden you find a pyramid, okay, one of these pyramids in Egypt, right? Okay, the natural question to ask is, okay, is this something necessary that needs to be there? No, because otherwise it would be there also in another part of the desert. Why here? Why right here? Right? And so the natural conclusion is, well, they're here because somebody built them here, right? That's obvious. Okay. So an unnecessary thing exists. Once I observe that an unnecessary thing exists, the logical conclusion, the obvious conclusion is it exists because it had a cause. Somebody built it. Okay. It would be totally ridiculous to say, no, I don't believe that anybody built the pyramids. They're there just because they're there. They've always been there, and they will always be there. Why? There's nothing necessary about that. Why would you think that? It's totally logical, totally unreasonable. And I would say that nobody would ever think anything ridiculous like that, right? Well, this is exactly what atheists think about the universe. Because if you give this definition to the atheist, that God is the necessary and cause of everything that exists, and you ask them, okay, based on this definition that I made of God, would you still say that you are atheist, meaning that you don't believe in God? Well, they probably will keep saying, yes, yes, I don't believe either in this God that you define this way. Okay, then you're gonna start arguing back, saying, well, okay, let's see what that implies. So basically, you're telling me that you do not believe that there is a necessary cause for everything that exists. Okay, so you're saying that whatever exists, which is this chair, this table, the city, the street, the animals, us, the universe itself, on one side is totally unnecessary. And I think vast majority of atheists, if not all atheists, will agree that the universe has nothing necessary in it. But at the same time, you're saying that this totally unnecessary thing has no cause. This sounds very much like the example I gave before about the pyramids. There's something, the universe, that is there, is totally unnecessary. You, atheists, admit that it's totally unnecessary, and still you refuse to admit that this universe must have a cause. And you say, I don't believe it has a cause. This is exactly that guy that looks at the pyramid and says, I don't believe that anybody built these pyramids. What? It's totally unreasonable. Okay. So when you give this type of argument, you start triggering some thinking in the atheist mind. They're going to start thinking, well, okay, this argument is going somewhere. Let me see how I can object to this argument. And of course, they have some objection and they try to come up with objection to this argument. And they have different ways of objecting to these arguments. One way is, well, uh, I see what you're saying, but I don't necessarily believe that the universe needs a cause. Actually, I believe that the universe was always there and will always be there and doesn't need any cause to exist. Okay, all right. So now you're making your problem even bigger because you're saying that there is something totally unnecessary, like the universe, that not only came up without anybody creating it or any cause creating it without any cause, but that was always there and will always be there. So a totally unnecessary thing that there's no reason, logical reason why it's there, actually is there, but not only it's there, has always been there and will always be there. What? This is so illogical, so preposterous that really, if you think into this, believing something so irrational is such a huge leap of faith that it will make any leap of faith in the religion world look little. Okay? You're telling me that something totally unnecessary, like this chair or like this universe, the matter and energy that is in the universe has always been there and will always be there, even if there's no reason why it should be there. And you pretend that I should buy into this? No. Why? Because your claim, once I define God as I define, you see that your claim becomes totally unreasonable and illogical. And the problem is not proving the existence or not the existence of something. The problem is how reasonable your claim is. Saying that the universe that is totally unnecessary was there always, will always be there for no reason, is a statement that to me is totally illogical, totally irrational, totally unreasonable. I don't buy into that. If you claim something like that is totally irrational and illogical and unreasonable like that, I'm sorry, but the burden of proof is on you. The burden of proof is on whoever makes the most unreasonable claim. And in this case, the most unreasonable claim is claiming that the universe just exists just because. This definition of God also is bulletproof to that silly question that usually atheists tend to ask. Oh, but if God created all that exists, if God is the cause of everything that exists, who created God, right? Well, if you follow the definition of God, you will not ask this question because I define God as that necessary, uncaused cause. God is necessary and therefore uncaused. Remember the 2 plus 2 equal 4 is there all the time. Okay. Who created 2 plus 2 equal 4? Nobody created that. It's there because it's true. God is not there because somebody created God. It's there because God is true, because the intrinsic essence of God is that of existing. All right. So even that question becomes a totally silly question. The other objection they can have is we don't yet know exactly what caused the universe, but maybe in the future we will. We're gonna find the perfect equation that is gonna explain why the universe came into being. Fine, fine. I'm a physicist too. I studied all these things, okay? And I had all these ideas in my head when I started to, you know, find the perfect equation, right? The equation of God, the equation that explains everything. It's great. And it's amazing that scientists are trying to find this fundamental equation that explains everything. But again, you're not gonna be able, even if that is true, and one day we're gonna get to know the fundamental equation that explains everything that we see. Then again, you have to ask the question, well, where does this equation come from? Where did this equation come from? Is this equation necessary? No, no physics equation, no equation in physics is necessary. Okay. Again, why? Because it has very specific parameters. They're not necessary. They could be completely different than what they are. Again, the speed of light, the charge of an electron, the gravitational constant, cosmological constant. Again, right? So no matter what the equation it may be, and we don't even know if there is such an equation, but maybe we'll find one day. But still, you have not solved anything. That equation itself is unnecessary. It could be a different equation with different parameters. Where did that equation come from? You see, you if that's your position, you sounds like those ancient civilization that thought that the earth was standing there because there was some animal like an elephant under that would keep the earth from not falling. And if you ask them, well, but what is keeping the elephant from not falling? Well, there would be another animal, okay, and a giraffe maybe. Okay, I'm making it up. Well, but what is the giraffe? Why is the giraffe not falling? Oh, because there's a tiger there, right? And you will go on and on until you will like stop asking, okay? Because you have to stop at a certain point. You cannot keep putting unnecessary cause, right, to explain what exists, because at the end of the day, it becomes silly, okay? You have to stop somewhere if you want to make sense of your argument. Otherwise you're gonna sound very silly, okay? And if you stop, right, and if you want to say that, oh, the whole pile of earth and animals doesn't fall because there is a animal down there that doesn't fall, well, that animals must be special, okay? Must be special, must be necessary. That's how you stop this silly regression, backward regression to infinity. Okay, that is totally logical, and anybody would have made this kind of laughable, right? You will laugh at somebody that tells you that the earth doesn't fall because there's an animal that keeps the earth afloat, right? Yeah, that's the same thing. You cannot go back indefinitely. Okay, to make sense of your argument, to not sound laughable, you need to stop somewhere and impose that there's some cause and necessary cause that keeps all the pile up in a logical way. And so the other objection is, well, but then I'm not saying that there's any cause or any unnecessary cause. I'm simply saying that whatever exists, it is all we see. Okay, matter, energy is what we observe. Okay, and so that must be necessary. We don't know why. We don't know why it's necessary, but that's what we see. And so I need to conclude that that's what necessary, that exists, is always existed, and will always exist. Well, congratulations, ding, ding, ding. You just proved that you believed in the God that I define. I said that God is a necessary being, and you're telling me that matter and energy have always been there, will always be there because they're necessary. Oh, that's your God. Now you're not an atheist anymore. Congratulations. You believe in this God that I define. And your God, let me tell you, it's pretty boring. It's a God made up of energy and matter. I'm sorry, I don't like your God. And if God is just a bunch of matter and energy, I'm sorry, but I'll stick with my God.